yes, we have a musical performances and a song selection upcoming. Vincent Paz-Macareno has assembled these from his expertise, and a lot of this is in a pre-recording, and I've been informed that we're doing kind of a musical cold open here.
Hey everyone, I'm incredibly honored to have each and every one of you joining me here today as we round out Bisexual Plus Research Group's 2023 Research, Activism, and Community event. You were just listening to Company Muna Remix by Tinashe and Muna, one of my favorite Bi Plus collaborations I came across while compiling the research I'll be showing you today. By the way, I'm Vincent Paz-Macareno, my pronouns are he, him, and I identify as a cisgender bisexual Latino man. I'm a creative professional, musician, and educator, and I'll be presenting this session on bisexual plus representation in music to you live from the traditional lands of the Tongva people that have become Los Angeles, California. I serve on the board of directors of Bisexual Resource Center, which you'll hear me call the BRC, where I set the direction of the organization's social responsibility initiatives as part of their diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and belonging committee, and lead projects and speaking engagements surrounding bi plus representation in media. Most recently, you might have seen my interview on hashtag GLAD Hangouts discussing my creative career in Bi Plus advocacy, or on PFLAG's Something to Talk About Live, where we discuss the power of media for Bi Plus youth. I like to consider my creative work as the engine of my career. It allows me to work with so many talented and diverse artists and share my interpretation of a rich tapestry of characters and stories. A little bit about me: I have a handful of stage and screen credits as an actor and vocalist, though live theater in particular is my absolute bread and butter. You may have seen me on stage in New York City, off Broadway, San Francisco, or here in Los Angeles. The industry loves to see me in Tom Hanks roles in site-specific immersive theatrical productions. Screenwriter and author Dave Eggers licensed the production of his novel The Circle in San Jose, California, about a year and a half before the release of the film version, complete with an interactive production-exclusive app and an insane 13-minute opening keynote monologue that I delivered live every night. So far, I'm the first and only other person to have ever played the role of CEO Eamon Bailey, other than Tom Hanks. A few years later, I played a handful of roles, including the hobo in Warner Brothers' Los Angeles production of The Polar Express, on a moving, completely film-accurate Baldwin 284 S3 class steam locomotive. At the beginning of 2021, I had the impactful opportunity outside of my iconic Tom Hanks typecast to combine my advocacy and acting work by workshopping Interactive Advocacy's touring production No Words by Raghib Alfasi for about a year and a half. The show is a heavy educational experience intended to advocate for victims of intimate violence in the military and other public sectors. It was by far one of the most emotionally taxing projects of my entire career, and it may also be one of the only projects I ever do that truly intersects these two aspects of my work. As a director and producer, I love telling stories that amplify LGBTQIA+ voices and promote the visibility of people of color. In 2015, I co-founded Third Act Theater in my hometown of Visalia, California, where I teamed up with other New York City theater artists to produce contemporary productions that showcase performers of historically marginalized backgrounds and actively challenged the heteronormativity in the region's largest productions. We produced about 2 years of programming before basing ourselves in New York City full-time. Both I and my co-founder, friend, and fellow bisexual Alex Church Gonzalez still carry much of the spirit and practices from those productions into the work we lead in our own careers today. Before we dive in, I have a few disclaimers. First, while the vast majority of the music we'll be listening to today is generally accessible to most audiences, some music will feature explicit lyrics and themes, so listener discretion is advised. More on that later. Also, while I do not claim to be a formal music historian or musicologist, I do happen to be in the businesses of both music and bisexual advocacy, and enjoy combining the two whenever it makes sense. I'm a classically trained baritone who studied under Grammy winner Dr. Jeffrey Benson and Juilliard alumnus Jane Seaman, and I love vocal directing for musical theater and teaching voice lessons and masterclasses. As we go through the presentation, please remember that this talk only explores a small group of culturally significant music by Bi+ artists that's intended to introduce you to as many corners of this subject as we can given the time frame. As many of my collaborators will tell you, I'm very technical and academic in my approach to laying the groundwork for any creative project, and I've made sure to hold my work with Bisexual Resource Center and Bisexual Plus Research Group to that same standard. Lastly, any research, commentary, and analysis featured in this production is my own and is compiled from publicly available media and discourse and does not represent my professional affiliation with any of the companies we discussed today. For the next 40 minutes or so, I'll be giving you all a look at the findings of the research I compiled while curating the BRC's most recent music anthology project, Bi Plus Undiluted, presented by Bisexual Resource Center, which we published as a playlist on Spotify, Apple Music, and thanks to popular demand, Tidal. Like many projects, the 6-hour listening experience went through a few iterations before becoming the largest and most diverse playlist, with every song featuring at least one bisexual plus, pan, queer, or unlabeled artist available on major streaming services. Long before I joined the BRC, I made a playlist called Bi Plus Undiluted that featured 8 artists and was a little over an hour of music. While none of the music or playlists I mentioned today feature any Broadway tunes, I based the title on the rather queer-codable lyric in the song I Can Do Better Than That from the musical The Last 5 Years by Jason Robert Brown. The vibes were there, but the playlist always felt incomplete to me, and I always felt like it deserved more formal research. The BRC had always been receptive to the idea of working together to release a music anthology resource, so when the project was greenlit by our staff member Jessica Podkalicki, I was excited to get to work. The playlist was initially supposed to be a dual release with a pre- and post-2000s version, and wasn't intended to be a fully realized version of its namesake, but as the list of post-2000s Bi Plus artists kept getting longer and longer, this version just naturally came to fruition and the title just kind of made sense and allowed for a lot of room for expansion. Today we'll be exploring some of the most culturally significant music, artists, and moments I did and did not feature in that project for one reason or another. Though don't be confused, they're all absolute bops. Alright, so here's the plan. We're going to be taking a look at how noteworthy Bi Plus music in pop culture has evolved over the past 20 plus years, with nods to the greats along the way. In addition to some clips and sound bites, we have about 30 minutes of music for you throughout the entire discussion, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the research. First up, let's talk Bi Plus anthems. Starting with the most mainstream entry, we have the title track from Lady Gaga's 2011 album, Born This Way. This song, as it announces in its bridge, has come to resonate with many people from across the LGBTQIA+ community, and is still played all over the world. Next, we have Take Me on the Floor by the Veronicas. Now, I hadn't actually heard much about the Australian identical twins, Jessica and Lisa Origliasso, prior to the curation of this project. Of the two of them, Jessica is bi plus and Lisa is an ally. When BRC board member Brooke Lindley suggested I add them to the playlist during a meeting, I suddenly discovered the Veronica's underground reign of bisexual anthemry since the 2000s. My partner started bumping them in his own music rotation while I was working on the project, and our test audience for the project were incredibly vocal about their gratitude for their being featured. Check out the bold lyrics in their 2007 song Take Me on the Floor. Last but most certainly not least, in 2023, ask most millennial and even Gen Z Bi Plus people what their favorite Bi Plus anthem is, and they will likely say Domo Wilson's 2019 indie rap hit Bisexual Anthem. In the playlist accompanying blog post where I go more in depth with my personal relationship with Bi Plus music, I deemed her the people's queen, as the vast majority of our test audience said her music were some of the definitive examples of Bi Plus music. This reflects in her metrics. The song and music video have nearly 60 million streams across Spotify and YouTube alone. Let's take a listen. Here's Bisexual Anthem by Domo Wilson. Also, listener discretion is officially advised starting now. Alright, now jumping into the wonderful world of Bi Plus collaborations. This aspect of our project ended up being the flagship idea for me. To put it simply, the more visibly bisexual plus people in a room together, the better. I feel like a version of that, along with our allies in attendance, is happening right now at this event and is the through line of everything we program over at Bisexual Resource Center. In regards to my playlist specifically, I prioritize the tone set by the collaborations most over any other category of song, though some were cut due to not fitting the criteria. The final version had a whopping 18 bi plus collaborations. Let's talk about a few of the most notable ones. Starting with what I believe to be the first bisexual plus collaboration in modern music, Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. Released around Halloween 1981, this legendary classic has become a rock standard and only increased in popularity and listenership when Vanilla Ice notoriously sampled the melody in his song Ice Ice Baby 9 years later. It's truly a song that speaks for itself. So we can properly set the stage for the rest of the songs in this category. Let's give the full song a listen. Here's Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. There have been few publicly bi plus male artists since Freddie Mercury and David Bowie relative to the amounts of publicly bi plus cisgender women. Nevertheless, some of them have put their hat in the ring, even if unintentionally so, to create a similar collaborative moment, starting with Biking by Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, and Jay-Z. This is a really awesome time. While Frank Ocean and Tyler the Creator have been collaborating together for years, it is especially meaningful to see this particular version of the song Biking, featuring Jay-Z in a wonderful show of allyship from one of the most powerful artists in music. One bi plus male collaboration, Fake by Lauv and Conan Gray, also happens to be the only bi plus collaboration to feature an Asian male. Both of these artists are so incredibly unique, and they come together to create a memorable moment of catharsis. Next, we have the song with the most bisexual representation at 4 artists, Let Me Know What's Really Good Remix by Kalela, Jungle Pussy, Princess Nokia, and Miss Boogie with Ally Cupcake. Women and non-binary people of color in hip-hop are absolutely leading the charge when it comes to bi plus representation, and this song is the highest form of that. Every artist we hear on this song, bi plus and ally alike, has a storied body of work amongst their listeners and is 5 minutes and 20 seconds of pure LGBTQIA plus music history. Next, we have an intergenerational bi plus collaboration, which is Alanis' Interlude by Halsey and Alanis Morissette. It's an absolutely fantastic listen. It combines both Alanis' and Halsey's styles in a balanced and eclectic way. And most impactfully, we have what I believe to be the only song featuring 2 black gender fluid and bisexual plus artists, which is Black by Bob the Drag Queen and Bassett. It's an expertly produced track and polarizingly political showcase of trans and bi plus visibility that we'll be listening to in full. Please be advised, while this is a historic song about empowerment and reclamation, listeners who are sensitive to homophobic slurs are encouraged to adjust their listening experience as they see fit until you see me come back on screen. Please be aware that the song features the sound of a gunshot at 2 minutes and 43 seconds. This is Black by Bob the Drag Queen, Bassett, and Ocean Kelly. So, as you can see, bi plus artists are everywhere in music, but every once in a while, like Born This Way, we get songs by bi plus artists that overtake the mainstream. We have a few examples of this over the years, starting with Beautiful by Christina Aguilera in 2002, whose message feels even more timely in today's social climate. In 2006, we got Valerie with vocals by Amy Winehouse, produced by Ally Mark Ronson, a wonderful rendition of a song originally by the Zootons and a wonderful moment of bisexual visibility. Fergie completely took over the airwaves around the same time with multiple songs from her album The Duchess a few years later. Jason Mraz made a triumphant entry into the mainstream with his song I'm Yours in 2008. However, none of these songs matched the moment that was had by the 2002 hit A Thousand Miles by Vanessa Carlton. The song was absolutely everywhere and cemented its moment in pop culture with the comedy film White Chicks by the Wayans brothers. There, Terry Crews's rather forwardly queer-coded character Latrell Spencer serenades one of the characters under the assumption that he is a Paris Hilton-esque heiress. As music from bisexual plus artists proved their viability in the mainstream throughout the 2000s, there's one entertainment giant in particular that I noticed have a certain affinity towards the talents of bisexual plus artists, often without even knowing they were bi plus at all, but also sometimes not. That company I'm referring to here is none other than Disney. I remember in 2013 I was in the car listening to a feature on NPR about a new animated movie from Disney with music written in part by Matt Lopez, the composer of the hit Broadway musical The Book of Mormon. This was so exciting for me at the time, as I just spent an entire summer falling in love with the absurdist, farcical cast album after the show won the Tony for Best Musical. Disney's Frozen came out a few months later and became the phenomenon we know today. One thing that I find really interesting about this property in particular is the company's choice to have bi plus artists perform pop versions of the flagship songs from the films. The first example of this is Let It Go, single version by Demi Lovato, a wonderful choice to interpret the soaring film version sung by Idina Menzel, who, might I add, was nominated for a Tony for playing the potentially bi plus adjacent character Maureen in Jonathan Larson's smash hit Rent. Demi Lovato was asked to record this prior to their coming out as bisexual. Interestingly enough, this trend continued into the film's sequel with known bi plus artists, with the song Into the Unknown, the spiritual successor to Let It Go. Disney mainly marketed the Panic at the Disco version, whose frontman Brendan Urie is pansexual, but we see something really interesting. Another bi plus artist named Aurora did featured vocals on the film version of the song, and Disney also allowed her to release her own version. So there are two bi plus artists of different genders that both officially released versions of the flagship song of Frozen 2. So that's something to think about. Disney's affinity for bi plus artists isn't limited to their most successful animated franchises, however. It's also seen in the talent they picked to lead the programming during the most prosperous era of the Disney Channel. Now, of course, none of these people identified as bisexual at the time they began working with Disney, but it is definitely interesting to see they all have since come out as some form of bi plus. Once again, we have Demi Lovato, who was soft-launched by Disney before having her star in multiple movies and even a TV show. Her song Cool for the Summer was definitely one of the mainstream bi plus hits of the 2010s. When she released her rock version, she changed the lyric Don't Tell Your Mother to Go Tell Your Mother. Next, we have Keke Palmer, who has been showing up and showing out and is absolutely popping off in her career right now, and we absolutely love to see it. This woman has been in the game since day one. Her recent music is incredible, but I still bump one of her early releases in particular, Keep It Moving, featuring Big Meech, which interestingly calls back to Walt Disney's iconic quote, "Keep moving forward." We also have Alison Stoner, who staked her claim early as a featured dancer for Missy Elliott and Eminem music videos before working on multiple projects for Disney throughout her career. She releases incredible original music, and she also has a wonderful cover of the Janet Jackson song Someone to Call My Lover that she switches up to feature two sets of pronouns. Next, we have Disney's villainess prodigy, Dove Cameron, who actually is an interesting case study among these specific artists, because while I was building the project for the BRC in particular, I didn't feel like her most popular bi plus songs were necessarily matching the kind of message that we wanted to go for in that specific project, but nonetheless, has music that a lot of bi plus people really enjoy, myself included. So she has a wonderful song called Boyfriend that definitely plays into some negative bi plus stereotypes, but we do know that's part of her image, that's part of her brand, and we want to allow space for that and celebrate her artistry. Check out the chorus of her song Boyfriend. Next, we have Bella Thorne, who starred alongside A-lister and ally Zendaya in the Disney Channel show Shake It Up. Most of her music is exclusive to the properties that she works on, and this song, Walk With Me, is her most streamed song on Spotify. Of course, we can't talk about Bi Plus 2000's Disney Channel stars without mentioning the bisexual rock star queen herself, Miley Cyrus. Miley has a handful of loud and proud bisexual bops, but one really amazing release from Miley Cyrus is her cover of the song Heart of Glass by Blondie, which was sung by Debbie Harry, who also identifies as bisexual. I cannot recommend it enough, so without further ado, here is Heart of Glass, originally by Blondie, performed by Miley Cyrus, live from the iHeart Music Festival. Speaking of Miley Cyrus, let's jump into music released by Bi Plus siblings. Miley's sister Noah Cyrus, who identifies as pansexual, invited her to perform a rendition of her song I Got So High That I Saw Jesus, which they later released as a single. It's a really incredible track that subverts the listener's expectations entirely. My favorite entry in the Bi Plus sibling music category is Summertime in Paris by Jaden and Willow, aka Jaden Smith and Willow Smith. I absolutely love Jaden's verse in the beginning, and the slow layering of Willow's vocals before her verse is an absolute moment. Not to mention, it's likely the only song with two black Bi Plus siblings. Let's take a listen to Summertime in Paris by Jaden and Willow. When it comes to the future of Bi Plus music, there's a few artists that I feel will define their genres for the rest of the decade and beyond. First, out of these last five artists, Doechii has been in my listening rotation the longest after I heard about her song Yucky Blucky Fruitcake, where she proudly exclaims, now, in 2023, she's been invited by Beyonce to open for her Renaissance tour, and even had a whole moment on TikTok with her song What It Is. Next, we have Raveena. She has a wonderful song called Magic. She is of South Asian origin, and her culture is so clearly celebrated in the sound and visuals of her music, while still establishing an aesthetic uniquely her own at the same time. Next, we have Arlo Parks and Phoebe Bridgers. I mentioned them together because they have a wonderful song together called Pegasus. I thought I was early on the Arlo Parks scene, but about a week or two into me compiling this research, I was driving past one of my favorite vegan spots on Melrose in Los Angeles, and I saw that she had an entire billboard-style advertisement from her record label on a storefront grate, so I always took that as a sign that I was following the right breadcrumbs. Last but most definitely not least, we have a personal favorite of mine, Renee Rapp. We're both theater people, and we both had career-defining moments in New York around the same time, so I've always kept an eye on her career. She got her first break in Mean Girls on Broadway, being casted by Tina Fey to be the first actor to succeed the role of Regina George after Taylor Louderman, who was nominated for a Tony for her performance in that role. Renee will be reinterpreting her performance of Regina George in the theatrical adaptation of the musical, opposite star of Disney's animated feature Moana and fellow bisexual Aloe Carvalho as Janice. To round out the research portion of this presentation, let's take a listen to Talk Too Much by Renee. All right, so that concludes the presentation of my research. Thank you all so much for joining me, and special thanks to Bisexual Plus Research Group and Skybox Studio for making this talk happen. In addition to Bi Plus Undiluted presented by Bisexual Resource Center, you can stream all the music you heard and heard about today with the playlist Bi Plus Undiluted Bisexual Plus Research Group's version, also available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Tidal. For a little bit of extra spice, I added 3 bonus Bi Plus songs and 1 song from an ally we didn't talk about today. Or wait, maybe we did. Check it out now. Thanks for watching, everybody.
All right, all, and thank you, Vincent, for putting that all together. I
Of
believe
course.
we might have time for a couple of questions for Vincent if anybody in the audience wanted to chat.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some thoughts. I'd love to hear however you received the music. I'd love to just hear how that came through for you. So feel free to share whatever your reaction was. I would love to hear it from everybody or anybody.
I'm a tad on the older side, so I learned a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And no, I mean, of course, and everyone has different tastes and genres and all that good stuff. So, and there's a lot of these artists I wanted to make sure got some visibility and some traction, in the wider Bi Plus community. So yeah, and I think I personally found their work very impactful. Like I was over here with my camera off, watching the whole time whenever the songs would play, and I would just be jamming, and that was literally like my experience even making it. So I had honestly the greatest time making it. I had the greatest time listening to it live with everybody. And yeah, so it's been a wonderful time.
I think it was such a lovely way to end the evening, or whatever time it is for everyone. It might still be daytime for you over there, Derek, but it was such a lovely way to end our event. And I'm so glad that we could share this time together to enjoy this Bi Plus music. And some of it we know and some of it we're learning about, and I definitely will be downloading the playlist as soon as we have access to it. So thank you so much, Vincent.
Of course.
Amazing. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, there was something in the chat.
Let's take a look. Let's see here. Love the playlist. I forgot some of the people you included, including TikTok faves and especially Ravina. Yeah, check out the playlist. If you can search Bisexual Research Group on Spotify, your streaming service of choice, you'll find it. Or you could also type Bi Plus Undiluted. It has every single artist we discussed today. Yes, wonderful playlist. I knew most of the white artists, but not as much of the others. So thank you for sharing. Especially fan of the Smith siblings songs. I know that was genuinely, oh my gosh, that one and Tinashe, the opening song. I personally just had to make sure to put that in somewhere and stuff because I found that to be the nucleus of the songs that we found, and Summertime in Paris by the Smith siblings as well. Definitely, I think, very definitive tracks for sure. And yeah, and that cold open, may I just say, that cold open very much was like just I wanted to set the mood and stuff and all that good stuff. So I hope everyone enjoyed it and all that good stuff. But I'm loving hearing these responses. I'm glad that you guys had a response to it. That's what matters the most to me. I'm glad that you guys got to learn a little bit more about some artists you might not have heard about. So thank you all for listening today. I'm honestly so incredibly honored that you guys gave me the time to share. So thank you.
And I think for me, it just gives me the extra motivation that we need to have an in-person event, or at least a hybrid event at some point, because I can just imagine people coming together to dance to this music and celebrate end of our event and celebrate Bi visibility or Bi Plus visibility together. So I think that's given us the drive that we need. We need a hybrid event. I would really love to share this moment in person with people one day if that is possible.
Yes, I definitely feel the same. Absolutely. Great.
It would be amazing to have a moment together to dance to this. Thank you, Vincent. It was brilliant, and I was fangirling a lot on the side, and Muna and Arlo Parks and Phoebe Bridgers. So everything was lovely. I already found the playlist. Thank you. Saved all of my future parties. So
awesome.